How you doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and we're back at it with a truly late-night edition of our Mets updates video, at least if you're watching this within the first couple hours that it first drops, that being February 4th, 2025 here, folks, because we have a lot to get into in this updates vid, not only on the latest with Pete Alonso, where do things stand with his market from the Scott Boras and Alonso side of things, from there, the Steve Cohen, David Stern side of things, and how all the latest reporting has an Alonso reunion feeling more than inevitable at this point in time, barring change. We will not only get into that, but how things are currently looking like the Mets are actually the most improved team. Yes, you heard that correctly. The most improved team this offseason, all without even having Alonso back in the lineup, at least yet. PECOTA came out with their yearly rankings and where teams are going to stand for their 2025 projections. We'll deep dive where they have the Mets coming out of the NL and the NL East in particular, and if they will be cracking playoffs, and if so, to what degree. Brandon Nimmo joins Clay Holmes, Ronnie Mauricio, Christian Scott, and plenty other Mets who have already arrived in the early goings of spring training, a week or so away from when pitchers and catchers formally report. We will get into Brandon Nimmo's latest talks with the media, taking some hacks there at spring training at PSL, and where things stand with the Mets and their bullpen front, and if they are truly done adding or not as we head into spring training. Thank you guys so much for smashing that like and subscribe on as you first chime in. Let me know your initial reactions to it all in the comments down below, and shout out to our mates and sponsor at BetUS, which has you covered with all your sports betting needs. You guys know the drill by now, folks. If you're into sports betting, if you know how to bet responsibly, highly important you guys make sure you only get involved if you're betting responsibly. Head over to betus.com.pa today and use Wardy's promo code YouTube50. That way you too get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, $125 on your second and your third, up to $2,000 for whatever you want to bet on. And I have biasly bet on my New York Knicks over the past couple of nights, and thankfully I've come out beautifully with some back-to-back victories here. Karl-Anthony Towns with a big night there after I just got his latest Slam magazine put on my wall that you guys can't see. It's out of frame right now there. Joined the one from last year. He had himself roughly 30 points, if not exactly right around 30, 20 plus rebounds. I need to get off the Knicks tangent. Congratulations to Nets fans on the big win over the Rockets too. I pay attention. I do, but really back in, everybody. Let's get into our first topic here today. It has everything to do with what you guys can see here, folks, having to do with the latest on where the Mets stand this offseason. Because Mike Petriello, folks, if you guys haven't seen it already, Mike Petriello, I might be butchering the last name, I apologize, doing a fantastic job writing for MLB.com, came out with a piece over the past day or so stating how, the team that improved the most this offseason was not, in fact, the LA Dodgers. And as we go on a deep dive his article, which I really, again, suggest you guys check out, I'll have it linked down below, the description of the video here for you guys to check out. This is a perfect breakdown on what the 2025 projected WAR is going to be for teams, and there we go. The New York Mets are number one there with added projected WAR for 2025 at roughly 9 WAR. If the Mets bring back Alonso, which as we alluded to feels inevitable, and we will get into that shortly, that'll have the Mets pushing a 10 plus WAR there. The second closest team is the LA Dodgers at right around 7.5 WAR, but the Mets added a lot, and Juan Soto is a big reason as to why that is, but the Mets are handsomely in first this offseason, and it isn't, again, something overly surprising when you knew how much turmoil was going to happen from them this offseason regardless, but I think it is still certainly superior to show just how much of an acquisition not only Juan Soto is, but the other moves so far on the smaller end the Mets have made this offseason, all while still having high hopes and bringing back the polar bear himself in Pete Alonso. This piece goes on to break down here on signing Juan Soto, who's projected to have a 6.5 WAR in 2025, and we'll see if that holds true. That comes after over 8 WAR season there, batting right next to Aaron Judge there for the Yankees in 2024. We will see Sean Manaea with a projected 2 WAR, Clay Holmes with a projected higher WAR than Sean Manaea, folks. Yes, you heard that correctly. Clay Holmes is projected to be a more impactful player than Sean Manaea next season for the most part. Frankie Montas at 1.4, Griffin Canning at 0.4 there, and then you look at the other combination of AJ Minter, Ryan Stank, Jose Siri, Jesse Winker, 3.4 WAR combines for them all. So simply put, the Mets have put themselves in good standing, and while they don't have 3 guys that they've acquired this past offseason that can account for a projected at least 3 WAR, the way that the Dodgers do, they're still in a very strong position to still have a strong 2025, even without Pete Alonso, just based on the team on paper alone. There's not only high hopes and a lot of the projections really favoring how Clay Holmes can blossom as a starter, which went in hand as to why we broke down in our video yesterday. Clay Holmes looking brilliant there, getting to Port St. Lucie on day 1 there, right at the beginning of February, basically, even a week plus before pitchers and catchers actually report. That way he can get fully stretched out and handle 5, 6, 7 plus inning outings as a true starter in the 6th man, and I just love every single thing about that. But a great read that, again, I really suggest you guys would check out. Link down below for you guys as always. But now getting on to how the Mets are the most improved team, at least on paper, per WAR. Now, projections does not always mean reality. I would like to preface that, obviously, folks. Just because the Mets have the most projected WAR acquired for 2025 does not mean that they're going to be the best team in 2025, but it's just a testament to what David Stearns was able to do and bringing in Juan Soto, thanks to Steve Cohen in heavy part, but also the other key acquisitions the Mets have made this offseason leading up to the latest year in Alonso. And as we get into the latest on the polar bear himself, everybody, let's take a look at what exactly the latest remarks are. And they come courtesy of Andy Martino, among others, from SNY, their latest panel. Listen up.
Sure how many tea leaves are left for you to read, but at this point,
there's still leaves.
There are still leaves, all right. What did the signings of Ryan Stanek and Nick Madrigal say to you about the Mets talks with Alonso?
So these are actually pretty big tea leaves, Eamon, to extend your analogy there. Look, it may seem weird on the surface to say that those 2 players influence the Pete Alonso situation, but they really do. And when the Mets signed Stanek, that's when I said, you know what, based on what I've been hearing through my coverage of this situation, that tells me that there is still a lane open for the Mets to possibly still pay Alonso. I'll explain. When, as we all know now, Alonso turned down their most recent offer, the Mets immediately pivoted with their dollars. They brought in Jesse Winker, A.J. Minter, and as Steve Cohen himself said at the Fan Fest, soon after that, he said, look, we're committing our dollars to other players now. So at that time, they were speaking to a couple of different tiers of relief pitchers. There was the $10 to $12 million guys. Kenley Jansen was one of those. And then there were
I'm really curious if David Robertson was in that mix of the $10 to $12 million guys, because he certainly will be signing for right around that range after a tremendous past season with the Texas Rangers. And David Robertson, in my opinion, makes a lot more sense than a guy like Kenley Jansen. And Kenley said no to the Mets because he wants to try to get to that next milestone on the save milestone, and the Mets aren't going to have that happen with Edwin Diaz in the mix.
were guys that cost about half that, and you could see, like, okay, are we going all in on spending for the Mets, or are we pulling back a little to create a little bit of space for another, say, $20 million some player? So when they signed Stanek, it was an indication that they're still going, listen, Pete, we know we decided publicly that we were moving on, but we're not spending everything right now, so maybe, possibly, we can still make that work. The Madrigal thing, same reasoning. You could have brought back Jose Iglesias. He's looking for a multi-year deal. It would have been a lot more money. It's only $1.3 million, $1.4 million on the split contract for Madrigal, probably for that utility job. So although the payroll is already going to be at levels that Steve Cohen and David Stearns did not want, we're talking 330s, 340s if they sign Alonso, they're just leaving a little room. They really still are.
So the one thing that I respectfully disagree with Andy on, he's been a heavy proponent this offseason on how the Mets pivoting, an essential pivot of Jesse Winker, Ryan Stanek. I mean, miss me with that nonsense. The dollars never came in question to that magnitude with how little the Mets were spending, even on a guy like A.J. Minter in comparison to what they were always planning to do with Alonso. And as David Stearns has been on record stating of recent how he certainly likes Alonso back with the Mets and would prefer that to have Alonso return, as is the case with Steve Cohen, even after his brutally honest remarks that Amazing Day tells you all you need to know. Again, the Mets know that they want Alonso back, but they just know that they want him back at their price. And I think this notion that, oh, by the Mets certainly pivoting now by putting in the public eye that they're pivoting, let's also pump the brakes. The Mets never put in the public eye that they are pivoting. This is a public negotiation. That is true. So the Mets do have people to a degree. And again, you guys can assume whatever you want. That's perfectly fine. That's the fun thing about about fandom, right? Regardless on how truly accurate it is or not, we can have these opinions on, okay, say the Mets throw out, have certain people in the media really push out this narrative, this notion. Then you have Scott Boras and his group push out a narrative and that notion. It kind of is a seesaw back and forth. It's almost like we've seen public negotiation with Scott Boras and Steve Cohen, and with Scott Boras and plenty of other teams for how many number of years, yet now we're just supposed to act surprised to it? No, this is all, again, commonality of the Scott Boras way with dragging out his clients, especially guys that are not elite talents like Juan Soto, but above average players, which is what Pete Alonso certainly is. But he falls in the same category as Montgomery, Snell, Chapman. I keep repeating myself, yet it's true, because now we're just a week away from pitchers and catchers reporting. If Alonso doesn't sign sooner than later, he will have a late start to the year that very well could impact his ability to have a breakout year in 2025 if he wants to opt out next year to then look for north of $200 million yet again in hopes that this 2025 run with it, like a guy like Juan Soto, will make the difference. But what is also true here, and this has been alluded by Andy, this has been alluded by Bob Nightingale, this has been alluded by everybody in the industry, Jeff Passan, you name it, is that an Alonso reunion continues to feel beyond inevitable right now, because there's no team that's in a more clear position of needing a type of player like Alonso than the Mets with that glaring hole at first base. We all don't want Vientos shifted to first unless you're bringing in Alex Bregman. And all the Alex Bregman talks are right now are crickets on the Mets front, but are certainly active on fronts that are not related to the Mets that I'll be actually discussing in the Bleacher Report at 4 p.m. Eastern, everybody, this Wednesday, that being February 5th, 2024. I'm MLB host, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the Bleacher Report app for MLB-wide topics. Beyond just the Mets, I'll be talking on Bregman, talking on Arenado, and all the latest, including Alonso, too, if we find out more news from now up until then. And yes, that was a quick promo, and they're now reeling back in for a second. The latest on Alonso is as simple as this, everybody. The market isn't there. The market is obviously cornered, everything favoring the Mets. The ball in his court, because the Mets know that they need to not have this situation where they're constantly circling back to him. And Steve Cohen is still going out of his way to still do that. Even days after the brutally honest remarks, we have still seen Steve Cohen go out of his way to reach out to Scott Boras' camp when talking on Alonso, try to get a deal done. Even if this is a $15 million gap or whatever it may be, it is still not a significant one, in my opinion, enough to have both sides separate, have Alonso sign elsewhere, and then have all that risk and potentially a one-and-done year, and then he opts in to play another year with the Blue Jays or wherever, and then he's not putting up the numbers they wanted to, and then he misses out on getting that true big payday they want long-term that he was looking for. He still has an opportunity to do that here, pretty much only with the Mets, and the Mets clearly have an opportunity to do something special here in 2025, but they are without question a Pete Alonso type bat short of getting exactly where they want to be. Having Juan Soto is amazing. I think the Mets could have a better run in 2025 alone and have a greater chance to get to the World Series than what they did in 2024 with Alonso. Yes, that is 100% accurate. Alonso was dragging his feet throughout the regular season. It was a liability with regards to scoring position. He was one of the most least impactful players in the Mets 1 through 9 lineup. He was pretty much their 6th best batter there throughout the regular season. If it wasn't for his playoff heroics there, he was an absolute liability for someone who's supposed to be certainty on the power front and the certainly runners of scoring position production front. He wasn't that until Devin Williams tipped him a pitch, and then the rest is history, and thankfully that has been tremendous recent history, and I want to see more of it. But Alonso needs to make sure that he re-rates this history here and continues his run with the Mets by just getting this deal done. As simple as that. For Steve to go out of his way to be saying how exhausting this is, yet not be done with you, shows you how much he does care, shows you how much he does want you to return. He just wants you to stop being thick-headed. And I know from the player's standpoint, you're not being thick-headed for just wanting the most money. I understand that. Again, Alonso may, for all we know, God forbid, have an injury-riddled year or a down season, right? And then he will not even get close to the bag they ever wanted. Things can change. Michael Conforto, after his walk year, goes down for a year with a shoulder injury, and the guy wishes he accepted the Mets $70+ million extension that they offered him in like 3.5 years ago. Again, things happen for a reason. But for Alonso, this is a ticking time bomb for him to finally make a decision that'll make sense for himself, for his future, to get adjusted, to get ramped up in spring training while he comfortably can with the boys, with Juan Soto, and have a run in 2025. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But I'm so sick and tired of talking about the Alonso nonsense. I'm sure we're going to have more updates to talk about tomorrow, but as each passing day happens, I know we get closer, but it doesn't mean that I don't get tired as a fan, as a creator, talking about, again, just the Alonso stuff every single day. It really does get exhausting, as Steve Cohen put it pretty beautifully over the past week and a half or so. Had an amazing day, everybody. But now, guys, let's get into something that is certainly on the positive front here regarding the Mets, and that has everything to do with the latest that we saw here with Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo, that you guys can see, was taking Hacks Day in Port St. Lucie. Here he is talking with the fans.
Hey Mets fans, down here in beautiful Port St. Lucie with the palm trees, 80-degree weather, waiting for you guys to get down here. I can't wait to get this 2025 season started. Spring training right around the corner. Let's go Mets. Get on down to St. Lucie, and I'll see you down here.
If Brandon Nimmo can play at least 150 games, I'm calling it 30-plus home run season. Beard, lock in. Full season with the beard. Don't shave it, Brandon. Lock in. I love it. I don't know if you're just rocking it right now because you're new officially in dad mode. I don't know if it's because of the fact that, you know, it's just in the early goings of spring training. Whatever it is, Brandon, keep it locked in. We got to have, again, that playoff type beard mentality all year long. Sign me up, baby. I'm loving that. Let's see more here. Mr. Nimmo himself and Brandon. Let me just go down because I have my everything checked off here wrongly. Give me 1 second. Here we go. Now for Brandon this year, the biggest test with him will be without question what's going on with the plantar fasciitis. That's why the Mets having those defensive juggernauts in Tyrone Taylor, but most certainly in Jose Siri in center, are going to play such dividends for this team, as Jose Siri has more range than pretty much anyone else in Major League Baseball as a center fielder, and with that tremendous speed will help back up guys like Brandon Nimmo at times. And Nimmo has a lot of range, as we know, as our typical center fielder from just a year plus ago. And then obviously we're having Juan Soto in right field, who, you know, at best is, you know, decent, you know, when it comes to the defense. Solid arm, but you're not going to get a lot there, unfortunately, when it comes to Soto and his defensive ability. He pretty much had a one-and-done breakout defensive year, and that was his final year with the Washington Nationals in 2021. Let me know in the comments down below, everybody. Do you guys have over or under Brandon Nimmo 25 home runs on the regular season? I know I was really shooting for the stars with 30, so you guys don't got to go for that one. But over, under 25 home runs for Brandon Nimmo, let me hear it.
End of the season, come October, you could have more RBIs or diapers change.
You know, I would love for it to be RBIs, but with the way it's going, I think I would have to put up like 6 or 7 a day. So, you know,
I can relate, Brandon. I can relate.
I think it'll definitely be diapers changed, but let's give it a run for its money.
Absolutely love it.
Yep.
It's hard to bottle that up, right? It's a whole new year. You got to find something new.
Yeah, I think so. You know, I think you accept that 2024 was its own year with its own magic, and we'll never forget it. But 2025 is a new team. You know, it's going to be our own players, new players, and you know, I think we're going to have to find our own magic and find our own way in 2025. But that's fun. That's what makes it fun, is that it's a new year, it's a new journey, and you know, we can do it, get to the same place, but we can do it in a different way. And so I think we're looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to having all the guys down here so that we can start that process of, you know, getting to know each other and finding that mojo.
I love that positive vibes there from Mr. Brandon Nimmo himself, and hopefully, again, Mr. OMG returns as well. I know that Andy Martino alluded to how the Nick Madrigal signing is pretty much a cheaper way to not bring back Jose Iglesias, and while I said that as well, it doesn't mean that Jose can't return, even with him looking for a multi-year deal. I'm sorry, even with the breakout year that Jose had this past season, it's hard to envision him getting a guaranteed multi-year deal anywhere as a utility man who only played half the season last year. I think he's destined still for a one-year deal. I will not be shocked if it's with the Mets, as we already already get into spring training is as electric as Jose Iglesias was, most teams across Major League Baseball understand that those kind of vibes are not necessarily going to work and click as well as they did with every single team, and they know that's a hard thing to replicate. For Iglesias and for the Mets, that was something I think they can really replicate to a degree, but I don't think it's going to work pretty much in any clubhouse. I feel like with the Mets, it absolutely does, and I think the fans would love to make it happen. I think Steve Cohen would like to make it happen, but let's just see how much Jose Iglesias wants to make it happen, as he, if I'm not mistaken, is a Scott Boras client, which could be the biggest reason as to why we don't hear about anything on the Iglesias front up until in the later goings of spring training potentially, but we'll see on that front. That's one of those things where if Jose doesn't sign until later in the spring, I'm confident that he'll be ready for the season, regardless of what role the Mets may ask him to partake in. And going back to Brandon Nimmo for a second, Nimmo did speak to the media and say how much he's looking forward to playing with Juan Soto. Obviously, that's a very exciting thing. Just said how much he's looking forward to the season in general. So Brandon Nimmo, there is a more expanded interview that I suggest you guys check out there on SNY's official YouTube channel if you guys have it already. Really, really good stuff over there, folks. And before we get out of here, just one to two final topics I got for you. And the first is going to be what we have here regarding PECOTA. And as you guys can see here, everybody, the PECOTA projections here, who I believe come through Baseball Prospectus for their latest, projections for the 2025 MLB season, have the Mets as the second best team out of the National League East. They have the Mets only trailing the Braves by just 3 games or so there to finish with 89 wins and 73 losses for a 77.5 percentage there on the season. The Phillies right behind the Mets, and again, the Mets only a couple games behind the Braves. I think that's very realistic right now. I think that's honestly respectable, especially knowing that the Braves, when healthy, very well could be the best team out of this group, at least on paper, throughout the regular season. I expect a level of regression with the Phillies this year, but not on their pitching front, but more so on their offense. I think might be a little bit more Jekyll and Hyde until they make some more moves, because again, they have a lot of boom or bust in that lineup, but having their rotation pieces, adding Jesus Luzardo as well, I thought was fantastic for them. So their rotation will continue to carry them. And for the Braves, we know how deadly they will be when they're healthy. They have the reigning Cy Young Award winner, Chris Sale, who's oh so nasty. Dodgers are the Dodgers. Cubs, very interesting. I think the Cubs are getting juiced up a bit too much here. Even with adding Kyle Tucker, losing Cody Bellinger, I don't think helps them too much. And while I like the moves that they have made, and we'll get into what other moves they made as of recent, I would just note here that, when you look at the Brewers, they shouldn't be slighted. And when you look at a lot of the other teams contending now out of the National League Central, anyone has a shot, at least at making playoffs, even the Pirates to a degree, even on the outside looking in. But that's an interesting pick for sure, to potentially have the Cubs with more wins than the Mets. I kind of have to see it to believe it. But these projections certainly have the Mets making playoffs, obviously, with that 77.5% playoff percentage is what I meant to see earlier. I think I just said percentage in general there. But for the Mets, they're a good standing, and they're also projected to have the 3rd most runs scored out of all teams in the National League, only trailing the Dodgers and the Arizona Diamondbacks in 2025. And mind you, this is all without Pete Alonso on the roster right now. So you mean to tell me that these projections would be even increased potentially? If Alonso is here, the Mets very well could be tied for first, if not leading the way there over the Braves. It'll be interesting to see when Alonso, knocking on wood, inevitably returns to Queens, barring changes, and how this really goes in hand with projections, whatever they may be. I just need to see this saga come to an end one way or the other. Again, can we please make that happen and get ourselves further ready for what's going to be a big spring training, everybody? And before I let you go, the final things I'll leave you with, 2 things happened that we saw in the bullpen front that you guys can see beside me. One, John Heyman broke that Tim Hill goes back to the New York Yankees at just under $3 million on a 1-year deal there, with a 2026 club option. And the Chicago Cubs are acquiring, for a player to be named later, Ryan Brazier. I thought it was a little funny considering the Cubs allowed Tanner Scott to go from the Padres to the Dodgers, because even though Tanner Scott preferred the Cubs wouldn't go beyond 3 years for Tanner Scott, which I understand to a degree. But for him to go to the Dodgers, I mean, I hate the Cubs for it. And then for the Cubs to now help the Dodgers shed payroll of $4.5 million on Ryan Brazier, for a player to be named later. Brazier, the Mets did have a level of interest in. They liked, according to Pat Regazzo, who's been doing a great job on the beat for the Mets as of late. And Pat did report on Tim Hill being of interest for the Mets, as well as Tim Healy initially over the past couple weeks this month. But Tim Hill, who had a lot of great success with the Yankees in particular after he was acquired by them from the White Sox last season, heading into postseason play, he was tremendous. Makes sense that he is at least going back to the team that he had a great run with. It would bother me more if he signed for such a cheap contract elsewhere outside of a team that wasn't the team that he just had great success with. So clearly, he's taking that lesser pay to a degree to stay in-house, stay with the Yankees over going to be with Desi Drewskull, Carlos Mendoza, Clay Holmes, and everyone else in company. It is what it is. Would have loved that lefty option. Would have loved the Mets to add another pen arm, but I think this is telling that the idea of the Mets signing any more guaranteed contracts this bullpen, you're going to have to see it to believe it. Otherwise, we're probably going to see more split contracts and guys with minor league options, spring training invites there to spring to see how they're going to do, to see if they're going to crack this bullpen. So guys, that is going to do it for our latest Mets updates video. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know again in the comments down below, what is your biggest takeaway on the latest with Alonso, on the latest with the Mets looking like the most improved team out of all teams this past offseason, the 2025 PECOTA projections, Brett and Nimmo's comments, him at Port St. Lucie, what we have with the bullpen, and everything else in between. Thank you guys so much for watching. Smash that like and subscribe on your way out, and let's go Mets, baby. Peace.